from what I have seen so far in the region, there are a lot of issues that indigenous peoples face. First and foremost, of course, is the issue of their control and ownership of their lands, territories, and resources. There are a lot of communities who are still waiting for formal recognition of their rights to these lands. Secondly, the issue of the extent of how the right to self-determination is being respected, such as the right to govern themselves and to use their own customary laws, traditional laws, or institutions to govern themselves. I think that's another problem. Thirdly, of course, the existence of so-called development projects or laws that totally undermine the rights to their land. So I have seen across the board issues related to infrastructure development, whether these are roads or hydroelectric dams, expansion of monoculture plantations, as well as the extractive industries, whether this is in mining, oil or gas extraction. This, for me, is one of the biggest problems that's common across all various Latin American countries, and this stems from the reality that indigenous peoples also don't take part when decisions are being made in relation that will affect them directly. So the right to participate, the right to free, prior, informed consent, that their consent has to be taken when such projects are brought to their communities, and such decisions are made, especially in relation to laws or administrative orders. So what I'm finding out is there's a lot of contradictions between existing laws that allow for the extraction of resources and laws that are supposed to protect the rights of indigenous peoples. Most of the countries have ratified ILO Convention 169, which of course gives indigenous peoples the rights to their lands and territories, as well as the right to be consulted and to be informed about what's happening in their communities. And from what I have heard so far, that is very inadequate. Indigenous peoples are not being consulted, they are not taking part in decision making, they are not even informed about activities or projects that are brought into their communities. So these are the common problems that I see, and what this means is that, of course, states have to do much better in terms of implementing conventions that they have ratified, like ILO Convention 169, as well as the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And indigenous peoples also have to be stronger in asserting and claiming their rights, and putting more pressure on the governments to do what is needed for them to be protected and for their rights to be truly respected and fulfilled. Not just in Peru, but generally, I think that the main obstacle really is there is a big gap between how indigenous peoples would like to protect their lands and live in their lands in relation vis-a-vis the way that governments think the lands and resources of indigenous peoples be used. I think there is a really big contradiction between the two, and that is really what's causing a lot of these problems, because indigenous peoples would like to relate harmoniously with their environment, with nature, with Mother Earth, but the actions and policies taken by states is how to extract many of these resources, whether these are trees or biodiversity or metals, minerals or gas, and the dialogue that needs to happen between the two of them so they can reach a middle ground is not happening effectively, satisfactorily. So I think there needs to be much more dialogue and exchange of views between the different parties, and to come up with to agree on a middle ground on whether this, to what extent can these resources be extracted and what will be the terms upon which this will be extracted. The kind of consultation that's contained in the ILO Convention 169. That has to be done in the best way possible, because if there is consultation, there is a discussion and a good faith between the two parties, then maybe some better, ways of implementing the rights of indigenous peoples can be reached.